Do you want to know what one of the best melee weapons is within the game? And the answer may just surprise you. You're probably thinking it must be something like the World's Edge or the Hero's Sword, as these are typically some of the best melee weapons and they send out projectiles. These are good and we will talk about them later, but have you ever whipped out an engineer's turret and tried to use that as a melee weapon? As we said, the results may surprise you because not only does this thing do crazy damage, but it also does very high stagger to enemies as well, making it a beast to take down grounded foes and bosses. So if you do plan to give this a try, there are a few things that you want to know to get the best results, as we've done a bunch of testing to find out what works and what doesn't. One of the very first things we tried out is to find out which turret does the most damage when used as a melee weapon. And from testing with each of the turrets that you can get, we found that each of these would actually inflict about the same amount of melee damage regardless of which type you're using. This means you're free to use whatever turret you like best for your build. On top of this, the turret that you use doesn't even have to be yours. This is because you can yoink your friend's turret after they've placed it down, so that you can show them the true power of the turret and you can place it back down after you're done with it. A cool thing about the Engineer is that its Prime perk allows you to overcharge the turret as well. To do this, you hold the skill button down, which will apply the overclock to your carried or deployed heavy weapon. This overclock effect grants it infinite ammo, increased rate of fire, and a 25% damage buff for 15 seconds. Because the damage of the turret is boosted through the overcharge ability, it means that you also get this 25% increase to damage even while using it as a melee weapon, and that's what we also saw in our testing. It took our damage from 963 to 1200, which is quite a lot considering the items that we were wearing at the time, which weren't fully min-maxed for melee damage. You can also further boost the melee damage of this by using skills like the Challenger class skills too. If we look at the Juggernaut skill, this makes you nearly unstoppable, gaining 3 stacks of Bulwark, 15% increased movement speed and melee speed, and 50% increased melee damage. And all of that lasts for 25 seconds. So not only do you get a massive 50% increased melee damage buff, but it also works with the turret, and thanks to those stacks of Bulwark, you'll also be able to tank even more damage, allowing you to face roll some of the biggest enemies in the game while dishing out a ton of damage with your Megaton swings. It is, however, worth noting that the movement set for the turret when used as a melee weapon is not the same as normal melee weapons. You don't have access to moves like dodge slash and charge attacks, you just have your normal melee weapon swings. Another drawback to this tactic is that if you are holding the turret but don't have the Engineer class yourself, then you won't gain that bonus movement speed while holding it, and you are quite slow while holding this anyway. In addition, you are able to dodge, but you won't do a complete roll, it's more of a sidestep, so take this into account. If you want to scale this damage of the turret even higher, you can stack stats that bonus both melee damage and skill damage, but do remember you can't have a mutator or weapon mod on the turret itself, but if you do have mutators that don't require you to hit with melee, then you can benefit from them. One such example is the mutator that gives you melee damage when your health is below 50%. Interestingly, one of the biggest benefits is that the turret doesn't use any stamina when performing an attack, meaning you can spam it indefinitely without having to manage your stamina. This thing absolutely shreds bosses, so give it a go while you can, because we aren't sure if this was an oversight by the developers, and as such, maybe it will be patched or nerfed in the future, but it is hilarious that right now it's one of the most powerful, strongest melee weapons, and it's simply just a turret that an engineer places down. If you do want some more traditional melee options though, then the Hero's Sword and the World's Edge are both incredible, but do require you to complete the game on harder difficulties. If you want to see what they do, the Hero's Sword has a mod on it that makes charge attacks use 35 stamina to release an energy wave projectile that the wielder can then use to strike enemies much further away. Meanwhile, the World's Edge has a fantastic one that makes its charge attacks release a wide horizontal projectile that pierces through multiple enemies, dealing damage, and this is my personal favorite. Both of them are wave projectile based weapons, and they're very good. We have been really enjoying playing a more melee focused playstyle in Remnant 2, so hopefully in the future the developers can create some really interesting mods for them, because currently it's only the special melee weapons that seem to have an effect on them, and the more default ones only have that mutator slot. But have you found any interesting or insane melee weapons? Tell us in the comments down below so we can all learn together. And the 2 videos on screen now, we think you'll really enjoy if you did enjoy this one. You don't have to watch them if you don't want to, but if you did like this video, you're probably going to like these ones too. And then tell us what you think after watching in the comments down below.